Welcome, welcome. Today we are starting out day one of distance education learning. We're going to kick off this new experience with a riddle. It's a who am I riddle. So you have to guess who's kind of talking here. Here is your prompt. People blame me all the time. They say I'm making trouble all over the world. But how much trouble can just 3 atoms cause? I'm just a gas. Anyway, don't blame me. Don't blame what you made. Stop wasting electricity. Ride your bike more, then we wouldn't have any trouble. So, who am I? Hey guys, it is Misty Berry, and today we are going to learn about carbon and the carbon cycle specifically. So something that we've already looked into recently was what carbon looks like on the periodic table. So we do have our periodic table of elements here, and looking specifically to find carbon, we're going to have to come over here. It has 6 protons in the nucleus. It has an atomic mass of 12.01, and it is going to be a very, very important element, and we're about to learn about why. So, knowing what we already know about carbon, this little guy, carbon dioxide is going to be important in what we breathe in, what we breathe out, what plants breathe in, what plants breathe out, and then kind of everything in between. So, looking up here, let's start with photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is familiar to us. The equation for photosynthesis is 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 H2O yields or produces C6H12O6, which is glucose or sugar, and then also 6 oxygen gas molecules. So we're going to see that carbon that we're using to make our photosynthesis is coming from the atmosphere, so we're pulling it into the tree. Those leaves are going to do the photosynthesis. You learned that in 6th grade. So as the leaves do the photosynthesis, that's kind of connected to what's happening over here. The plant's also going to respire, which is the second part where carbon is being part of that glucose molecule, and we're also producing that oxygen that goes back into the atmosphere. So coming down from our tree right here, sometimes our trees die. So if our tree dies and decomposes, we're going to see that it's going to be a dead organism. The same would go for our little sheep friend right here. He's really cute. So if our poor little cute sheep died, he would be decomposing down deep in the earth. So we know that we find fossil fuels deep down inside the earth. And what do we do with fossil fuels? Well, we like to burn them. We like to burn them in our cars to make our cars vroom, 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 go very fast. Or for our factories, so the carbon dioxide is part of the pollution component there for burning things like coal. So that's kind of where we're going with this. Those carbon molecules that were in the tree is going to be a big source of carbon because it's pulling all that carbon out of the atmosphere and inside of it. The tree decomposes, or the plant or the organism decomposes, buried lots of time, lots of heat, lots of pressure inside of the earth, inside of that lithosphere. So coming over here, we know our different spheres, the lithosphere and the geosphere, kind of are a big player in that. So we're going to see that that's pushing the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So again, we're seeing this kind of continual loop-de-loop process. One factor is you're part of this too. So you, just like our little sheep friend, you respirate, meaning that you breathe. So when you breathe, you're breathing in oxygen, that good stuff, that O2, and then you're exhaling what? Carbon dioxide. So you're exhaling that carbon dioxide, and the plants are doing the opposite, and this whole cycle kind of revolves around that. One thing that we didn't get into, because I ran out of space on my board, is the hydrosphere and its role. So that's something we're going to look at further in our lessons today. One thing I do kind of want to highlight for you in more detail is just a better visual of the carbon and the oxygen cycle, how it kind of goes round and round. You see that the plant is going to produce oxygen that the animal takes in. The animal breaks down sugar molecules and exhales carbon dioxide, the reverse of our photosynthesis equation right here. And then the tree takes that carbon dioxide produced by the organism back in and uses it to make oxygen again. So again, it's just a continual process going round and round and round. So look out for more information on the carbon cycle today. Have a great day. HJ misses you. All right, guys. So we talked about learning about or relearning the carbon cycle, and the carbon cycle was something that we covered very early on, and now we've learned a lot more about the specific parts that are going to come into play. So we're going to start off reading through this textbook article together. So let me click undo there, get my mouse. So we know that all ecosystems need certain materials. Living things depend on their environment to meet their needs. You can think of those needs in terms of the material or matter required by all living things. For example, all organisms take in water and food in order to survive. All of the materials an organism takes in are returned to the ecosystem while the organism lives or after it dies. The movement of matter through a living and non-living part of the ecosystem is a continuous process or a cycle. A cycle is a series of events that happens over and over again. Matter in an ecosystem may change form, but it never leaves the ecosystem, so the matter is said to cycle through the ecosystem. Three of the most important cycles in ecosystems involve water, carbon, and nitrogen. So here, water, we know about the water cycle. So that's something that at this point you should be very comfortable with. We know that water falls from clouds. It's not a very pretty cloud. It rains, and then that rain is going to evaporate and then condense into the cloud. We got that. The kind of tricky part there that might get you, it would be a question about like transpiration, like the process specifically of the plants, their leaves transpiring, so the water vapor getting into the air that way. But other than that, you should be very comfortable with the water cycle. So coming down, we know the water cycle. I'm not going to make you read that. Carbon cycle, this is what we're interested in. So looking here, carbon cycles through ecosystem. Carbon is an element found in all living things. Carbon moves through the Earth's ecosystems in a cycle referred to as the carbon cycle. It is through carbon dioxide gas found in Earth's atmosphere that carbon enters the living parts of an ecosystem. Plants use carbon dioxide to produce sugar, a process called photosynthesis. Sugars are carbon compounds that are important building blocks in food and all living matter. Food supplies the energy and materials living things need to live and grow. To release the energy in food, organisms break down the carbon compounds, a process called respiration. Carbon is released and cycled back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. When living things die and decay, the rest of the carbon that makes up living matter is released. So now let's try to check your reading. Name 3 ways that living things are part of the carbon cycle. So take a second, think about that for me. So 1, we know that plants are going to be part of the carbon cycle because they're doing photosynthesis. So that's going to be our first example. 2, we know that living things also die. And when they decay, that carbon is kind of released to go on the next step of its journey through decomposers, which are also living things. So those could be your 3 things: plants, living things, and then decomposers. So here is the part that I said that we would come back to. Earth's oceans contain far more carbon than the air does. In water ecosystems, lakes, rivers, and oceans, carbon dioxide is dissolved in water. Algae and certain types of bacteria are photosynthetic organisms that produce food in these ecosystems. Marine organisms too release carbon dioxide during respiration. Carbon is also deposited on the ocean floor when organisms die. So here's kind of showing that process in the water specifically, where you have those aquatic plants that are doing photosynthesis and that carbon dioxide is getting dissolved into the water. The plants are also respiring, so that's getting out into the atmosphere again. So an exchange kind of happening there, along with the exchange that we've already looked at. Large amounts of carbon are stored underground. The remains of plants and animals buried for millions of years decay slowly and change into fossil fuels such as coal and oil. The carbon in fossil fuels returns to the ecosystem in a process called combustion. As humans burn fossil fuels to release energy, dust particles and gases containing carbon are also released into the environment. So that kind of sums up our carbon cycle in a way that you could have A, chosen to read yourself, or B, had me read to you. So now that we've kind of looked at it together, make sure you're moving on to your next steps. All right, guys, so now we have some practice questions. The answers to these practice questions will be at the end of the video in the comments, or I'll have them off to the side somewhere, but they'll be easy to find, I promise. So, carbon cycle practice questions. Number 1. Which part of the carbon cycle involves animals breathing in oxygen and out carbon dioxide? A, photosynthesis, B, the oceans, C, respirations, D, decay, or E, combustion? Writing down your best answer now. Okay, pause the video if you need more time, but we're moving on to the next one. Why is carbon such an important element? A, because carbon is a key element in producing electricity. B, because without carbon, the sun would run out of energy. C, because carbon is the central element to all living organisms. Or D, all of the above. Writing down your best answer for me. Again, you can pause if you need more time, but we're moving on to the next question now. Which part of the carbon cycle occurs when plants convert sunlight and CO2 into oxygen and sugar? So we have A, photosynthesis, B, the oceans, C, respiration, D, decay, or E, combustion. Jotting down your best answer. So it is going to be important that we know the difference between photosynthesis and respiration and combustion. Decay, obviously that's going to be a little bit different than those three. You know, decay kind of means to be decomposed. And the oceans, that one should be pretty self-explanatory, people. That big blue thing, a few miles towards the east. So next up we have, which part of the carbon cycle occurs when plants, trees, or fossil fuels are burned? A, photosynthesis, B, the oceans, C, respiration, D, decay, or E, combustion? Choosing your best answer. So how has man influenced the carbon cycle and increased the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? This one's a little bit more difficult, so pay attention. A, burning coal, B, cutting down trees, C, burning oil, D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. How has man influenced the carbon cycle and increased the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? So those are the end of our practice questions. So make sure you're staying tuned for next steps.